I never thought I'd be fighting for my life in the home I built with my own hands. It all started when I pretended to be asleep on the porch swing, the gentle creak masking the sound of my racing heart. My grandson Kevin thought I was dozing off when I heard him hiss to his wife Chloe, "Just a few more weeks, then we can move Grandpa into that facility." I confirmed the reservation this morning. He had no idea I'd been flushing that health tonic down the toilet for a month, and had a voice recorder running in my cardigan pocket. But before I continue, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Granny's Diaries. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing our community grow. Sprawling rustic home on the edge of the lake. A place I built log by log. Kevin, my only grandson whom I'd raised since he was 10 after his parents died, showed up with his duffel bag. "I'm moving in, Pops. You shouldn't be by yourself right now." I was so touched. I thought it was the kindness I tried to instill in him. Kevin and I always had a strained bond. He was never satisfied, always looking at what others had. At 35, married to Chloe, a woman who never met a dollar she didn't want to spend, he'd always eyed my property with a certain greed. 10 acres of pristine lakefront, the house appraised at over $2 million. The first few weeks he was the model caregiver. He cooked my meals, handled the groceries, and made sure I took my vitamins. Every night at 9 p.m. sharp, he'd bring me a steaming mug of a special herbal tonic. "For your heart, Pops," he'd say. "The doctor said stress can be brutal at your age." I'm 78, but I've always been sharp as a tack. By summer things felt fuzzy. I'd be in my workshop and forget why I'd walked in. My thoughts felt thick like wading through syrup. "It's just grief, Pops," Kevin would say with a pat on my shoulder, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. A routine set in: tonic at 9, confusion by 10, a long rest on the porch by 11. I started missing my weekly fishing trips, forgetting the names of old friends. But I noticed it all started after I drank that nightly tonic. In August, Kevin started driving me to my doctor's appointments. "I'm worried about my grandfather, doctor," he'd say, his voice full of false concern. "He's been leaving tools on, getting disoriented on his own land." Dr. Murphy would look at me with pity. "At his age, some cognitive decline is expected, Kevin." I tried to speak up, to say I was fine, but my tongue felt heavy, my words slurred. Soon after, Kevin and Chloe helped me with my finances. "Pops, we found unpaid property tax notices," Chloe said sweetly. "It's better if we manage things for you." My pension from the railroad and Eleanor's Social Security came to a solid $8,000 a month. The house was paid off decades ago. My expenses were maybe $2,500. Yet suddenly I was always broke. "Where's all the money going, Kevin?" I asked one evening, my voice trembling from the drugs more than emotion. "Your new heart medication is expensive, Pops. Just the beta blockers are $400 a month." Beta blockers. I'd never been prescribed those. It was the first crack in his story, but my mind was too clouded to see it clearly. One day I overheard Kevin telling my neighbor, "It's so hard watching my grandfather fade. Dementia is a thief." Dementia? When I tried to argue, my words came out a jumbled mess. Kevin would just guide me gently back inside, telling the neighbor, "He has his good days and bad days." The isolation was systematic. My weekly chess club? Too stimulating for Pops right now. My old fishing buddies? He gets agitated around too many people. Even my sister Margaret, who lived a state away, was told I was having paranoid episodes and didn't want visitors. One October evening, feigning sleep on the porch, I heard Kevin on the phone. The developer said he'll give us $2.5 million for the land alone. Once we have power of attorney, it's ours. My blood ran cold. Power of attorney. Sell my land. That night I didn't drink the tonic. I pretended to sip it and poured it into a potted fern when Kevin left. The next morning, my head was clearer than it had been in months. I did it again the next night and the next. Within a week I was certain. My own grandson was poisoning me. I drove to a tech store in the next town over and bought a high-quality digital recorder. If Kevin thought he could outsmart a man who'd been a master machinist for 40 years, a man who could build an engine from scrap, he was about to learn a brutal lesson. My plan required patience. I needed proof. For 2 weeks, I kept the recorder in my pocket. One chilly November night, I caught it. Kevin was in the kitchen, thinking I was asleep in front of the fireplace. The lawyer already drafted the competency papers. He was saying to Chloe on the phone, "He says Pops shows classic signs of advanced dementia. We just need one more medical sign-off." I kept my breathing even. The assisted living facility is $7,000 a month, but who cares? Once we sell this place, we can buy that penthouse in the city and still have a nest egg. My horror turned to cold, hard rage. "Don't worry," Kevin continued. "He won't remember any of this tomorrow." I doubled the dose of the sedative. I'm mixing the lorazepam with a little zolpidem now. It was all there. In that moment, everything was terrifyingly clear. The next day, I collected a sample of the tonic in a small jar, hiding it in a hollowed-out book in my workshop. I did this for 3 days, each sample labeled. Meanwhile, I played my part perfectly, letting them believe their plan was working. In mid-November, I found a folder on Kevin's desk. A printed timeline: December, secure final medical evaluation. January, file for guardianship. February, transfer to Shady Oaks facility. March, list property. But the real shock was a printed email confirmation for a penthouse condo. A $200,000 down payment. My money. I needed help. I had to be careful. I remembered Sarah Bennett, the sharp, no-nonsense lawyer who had handled Eleanor's will. She'd always side-eyed Kevin's flashy demeanor. When Kevin and Chloe went to the city for the day, I called her. "Sarah, it's Arthur. I need your help and no one can know." I explained everything quickly. "Arthur, this is grave. We need irrefutable proof before we act. I have tonic samples and recordings of him admitting he's drugging me. Bring everything to my office tomorrow. We'll also get a blood test. Arthur, if you're right, this is attempted murder." The next day, I told Kevin I had a routine follow-up with Dr. Murphy. "I'll drive you," he said instantly. "No need. My buddy Frank is taking me." Frank was my alibi, but I called a cab. Kevin was suspicious. "Pops, you can't even remember Frank's phone number. How are you getting to the doctor?" "I remember it just fine. It's 555-0187. I saw a flicker of alarm in his eyes. I had to backtrack. "Or is it? Oh, I'm all mixed up again." The relief on his face was palpable. "It's better if I go with you. Frank's already on his way." "It's fine." I left before he could argue. In Sarah's office, she closed the door. "Arthur, you seem completely lucid." "It's because I haven't had my tonic today," I said, placing the samples on her desk and playing the recordings. Her face grew sterner with each word. "I'm having a nurse come in to draw your blood for a toxicology screen, marked urgent. Then we'll do a full cognitive assessment. We need to document that your mind is sound." The test took hours. Memory, logic, spatial reasoning. Sarah noted every result. "Arthur, your cognitive function is exceptional for your age. There is zero indication of dementia." Before I left, she gave me a small magnetic device. "It's a hidden camera. Place it where it can see Kevin preparing your drink. We need video evidence." I got home just in time. When Kevin asked about the doctor, I mumbled something about my arthritis. He bought it. That night, I installed the camera inside a vintage tobacco tin on a high shelf, aimed directly at the kitchen counter. The next morning, I watched through slitted eyes as Kevin prepared my poison. The camera captured everything: him crushing the pills, stirring them into the mug. When he brought it to me, I smiled weakly and pretended to drink as he watched. The moment he left, I poured it into the same long-suffering fern. 3 days later, Sarah called. "Arthur, the toxicology is back. You have dangerous levels of benzodiazepines in your system, lorazepam and zolpidem. At your age, continuous doses could cause respiratory failure. And the footage is perfect. We have him on video. I've contacted the police. But before they move, we need to get you to safety. Is there somewhere you can go? I can't leave. If I disappear, they'll know I'm onto them. Then we do this differently. Keep up the act. Stop consuming anything he gives you. I'm filing the evidence and requesting an emergency protective order. I hung up and heard Kevin's truck pull in. I quickly sat in my armchair, picking up a newspaper and holding it upside down. Everything okay, Pops? He asked, oozing false concern. Just reading, son. The words are all jumbled today. It's the dementia, Pops. I'll make you your tonic. It'll calm you down. I watched him walk to the kitchen, knowing he was preparing another dose of his poison, all while the camera in the tobacco tin recorded his every move. I allowed myself a small grim smile. The trap was about to spring. The next few days were a tense performance. I leaned into my role, shuffling around the house and asking the same questions repeatedly. Where's Eleanor? I'd mumble, watching Kevin's face for a reaction. He'd exchange a satisfied glance with Chloe. She's gone, Pops. Remember? He'd say, his voice dripping with patronizing sympathy. But the net was closing. Sarah had coordinated with Detective Miller, a seasoned officer with a no-nonsense demeanor. The operation was set for December 23rd. We'll come in the morning, Sarah told me in a hushed call. The protective order grants us immediate removal of Kevin and Chloe from the property. The evidence is overwhelming. On the evening of the 22nd, the tension in the house was a physical presence. Kevin was agitated, pacing near the Christmas tree they'd put up, a hollow gesture if I'd ever seen one. Everything set with the movers for January? Chloe asked, not even bothering to lower her voice anymore. Almost. The facility is ready. Dr. Mendelsohn signed the final papers today. It's done. Kevin's voice was final. That's when I decided to stop the act. I slowly stood up from my armchair, letting the Afghan blanket fall to the floor. I stood straight, my voice clear and steady, all traces of confusion gone. Which facility, Kevin? Shady Oaks? The one that costs $7,000 a month of my money. The room went dead silent. Chloe dropped the ornament she was holding. It shattered on the hardwood floor. Kevin stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. Pops, you're confused. I'm not confused, I said, my voice low and cold. I know about the lorazepam and the zolpidem. I know about the penthouse downtown. I know you've siphoned over $150,000 from my accounts. And I know you plan to have me declared incompetent the first week of January. Chloe looked at Kevin, her face a mask of panic. Kevin, what is he talking about? He's having a delusion. Kevin snapped, recovering slightly. It's the dementia. He doesn't know what he's saying. I know I have video of you crushing pills into my drink, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. I have audio of you planning to sell my land. I have my blood test results showing the poison you've been feeding me for months. Kevin's face contorted from shock to pure rage. You deceitful old man, he snarled, taking a step toward me. You were spying on me? I was protecting myself from you. My own grandson. The words tasted like ash. You were always so stubborn, he shouted, his composure shattering. Holding on to this land, this big empty house. We needed that money. We have a life to live. You had a life. I gave you a life. I raised you. I put you through college. This land, I said, gesturing around me, is my life. Mine and Eleanor's. It was never yours to take. You're an old man. Your time is over. Chloe shrieked, her pretty face twisted with venom. You were just going to die here alone anyway. We were just speeding things up. The admission hung in the air, ugly and final. At that moment, headlights cut through the front window, illuminating the room in stark flashes of blue and red. Kevin's eyes widened in panic. You called the cops on your own family? You stopped being my family when you decided to poison me, I said, just as a firm knock echoed through the house. Detective Miller, Sarah Bennett, and two uniformed officers stood at the door. Sarah held up a document. Kevin Miller, Chloe Miller, this is a protective order. You are to vacate these premises immediately. You are also under arrest for the attempted murder of Arthur Miller, elder abuse, and fraud. The look on Kevin's face was one of sheer, utter betrayal. As the officers handcuffed him, he stared at me, his eyes full of a hatred I still can't comprehend. I hope you enjoy this big empty house, old man. I hope you die alone in it. They led them away. Chloe was sobbing, but Kevin was silent and seething. The house, for the first time in months, was truly quiet. In the weeks that followed, the legal machinery ground on. The evidence was so overwhelming that Kevin and Chloe took a plea deal to avoid a trial. They were each sentenced to 15 years in prison. The aftermath was a different kind of battle. The silence in the house was deafening. I'd find myself staring at the porch swing, remembering the conversation that started it all. I had the locks changed, the security system upgraded, but the real fortress I had to rebuild was inside me. My old fishing buddies, men I'd known for 50 years, rallied around me. Frank, my alibi, started coming over every Sunday for a beer. Should have seen it coming, Art, he'd grumble. That boy always had a hungry look in his eye. My sister Margaret moved back to the area. Furious she'd been manipulated and determined to make up for lost time. I sold the penthouse Kevin had put a down payment on and recovered most of the stolen funds. But some things you can't get back. The trust. The memory of the little boy I taught to fish on this very lake, who now saw me as an obstacle to be eliminated. One afternoon in early spring, I was in my workshop, the scent of pine and motor oil a comfort. I was rebuilding an old carburetor, my hands doing the work my mind needed to process. The door was open, letting in the fresh air. A shadow fell across the doorway. I looked up, my heart seizing for a moment. It was a woman in her late 20s with familiar eyes. "Mr. Miller," she said softly. I'm Melissa, Kevin's half-sister." I froze. I knew Kevin had a different father, and that man had another daughter, but we'd never had contact. She looked nervous, holding a small envelope. "I know I have no right to be here," she said quickly. "And I am so sorry for what he did to you. I read about it in the papers." She held out the envelope. "Our father passed away last month. Going through his things, I found this. It's a letter for you. From Eleanor." My breath caught. Eleanor? I took the envelope with trembling hands. My name was on the front, in her elegant, looping handwriting. "I thought you should have it," Melissa said. "And, for what it's worth, from what my father said, Kevin was always troubled. This wasn't your fault." She left as quietly as she came. I sat down on my workbench, the carburetor forgotten. I opened the letter. It was dated just a week before she died. "My dearest Arthur, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you found the strength to open my old stationery box. I'm writing this because I'm worried. I saw Kevin going through your medication cabinet today. When I asked him what he was doing, he got a look in his eyes I didn't like. He said he was checking expiration dates, but it felt wrong. I know he's been struggling for money. I overheard him and Chloe talking about our property last month. Arthur, my love, I need you to be careful. I don't trust him. I've always loved that boy, but the man he's become, he frightens me sometimes. Please protect our home. Protect yourself. You are the strongest man I know. Don't ever let anyone make you think otherwise. All my love, now and always." Eleanor. Tears streamed down my face, splashing onto the paper. She knew. In her final days, carrying that terrible secret, she had tried to warn me. She had seen the monster I was blind to. I folded the letter and held it to my chest. The grief was a fresh wound, but it was clean. It wasn't mixed with betrayal anymore. It was just love, and the terrible, beautiful pain of missing her. I walked out of the workshop and down to the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and purple. This was my land, my life. It was not a prize to be won. It was a testament to a love that lasted 50 years, and a strength that, as Eleanor said, no one could take from me. The fear was finally gone. In its place was a solid, unshakable peace. The battle was over. I had won. And for the first time since I heard that whisper on the porch swing, I was truly home. The peace I found by the lake was real, but it was fragile. The letter from Eleanor was both a balm and a confirmation of my deepest fears. She had seen the darkness in Kevin long before I had. I had it framed in a simple, elegant frame and hung it in the living room, right next to the last photo we took together. It was my reminder to trust my instincts. Life settled into a new, quieter rhythm. Margaret became a constant presence, her no-nonsense attitude a grounding force. We spent our days fishing, arguing over crossword puzzles, and slowly sifting through a lifetime of memories in the house. I started volunteering with Sarah Bennett's firm, offering my perspective as a survivor to help other seniors navigate the legal system after experiencing abuse. It gave me a purpose, a way to forge something good from the wreckage. Then, about 8 months after the sentencing, the first letter arrived from prison. It was from Kevin. My hand trembled as I held the plain, regulation envelope. Part of me wanted to throw it directly into the wood stove. But another part, the part that remembered teaching a freckle-faced boy to cast a line, couldn't do it. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was sharp and angry, unlike his usual scrawl. "Pops, I suppose I should congratulate you. You played the senile old fool perfectly. You always were smarter than everyone gave you credit for. Life in here is exactly what you'd imagine. I have a lot of time to think. I think about that lake. I think about how you always said land was the only thing they weren't making more of. You were right. You hoarded it all for yourself. Chloe filed for divorce. Took what little money was left. I hope you're happy. You won. You got your empty house and your empty life. Don't bother writing back. Kevin." The letter wasn't an apology. It was an accusation. He still saw himself as the wronged party. I showed it to Sarah and Detective Miller. "It's manipulative, Arthur," Sarah said. "He's trying to get a reaction to re-engage with you. Don't take the bait. He's isolated and angry," Detective Miller added. "This is a common tactic. He wants to maintain some form of control over you, even from behind bars." I followed their advice. I didn't reply. But the letter stirred up the hornet's nest I'd tried so hard to calm. The nightmares returned, vivid dreams of choking on the bitter tonic, of Kevin standing over me with a cold smile. A few weeks later, a second letter came. This one was different. "Arthur, I've been in therapy. They make us do it here. The therapist says I need to take responsibility for my actions. So here it is. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I got caught. I'm sorry I underestimated you. That's not what they want me to say, but it's the truth. You want to know the real truth? I was jealous. Jealous of you and Grandma. Jealous of what you built. I wanted it and I didn't want to wait. Dad was a deadbeat, and you were the only father I had. But you always loved this land more than you loved me. You proved that when you sent me here. There's a new inmate here. A big guy. He doesn't like me. It would be a shame if something happened to me. A real shame." The shift in tone was chilling. The first letter was rage. This one was a calculated blend of pseudo-self-awareness and a veiled threat. He was playing a new game, trying to guilt me, to make me feel responsible for his safety behind bars. The mention of his father, a man he'd never known, was a new low, a pathetic attempt to rewrite our history. This time I didn't show it to anyone. I simply filed it away in a folder with the first one. He wanted a reaction? He wouldn't get one. But his words, "You always loved this land more than you loved me," echoed in the silent house. Were they true? Had I been so focused on providing a stable home, on teaching him the value of hard work, that I'd failed to give him the unconditional love he needed? The doubt was a poison more insidious than the one he'd put in my tonic. The final straw came just before the anniversary of Eleanor's death. It wasn't a letter. It was a phone call. The prison warden himself. "Mr. Miller, I'm calling to inform you that your grandson, Kevin Miller, was involved in an altercation in the yard. He sustained some injuries, but he's stable." My heart hammered against my ribs. What kind of injuries? Broken nose, 2 cracked ribs. He provoked another inmate, from what we can gather. He's been agitated lately. He claims he has powerful enemies on the outside who want him silenced. I went cold. This was his masterstroke. He had engineered a situation to force my hand to make me feel culpable. He was the victim now, and he was pointing the finger at me. I drove to the prison the next day, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I hadn't seen him since the arrest. He was led into the visitation room, his face bruised and swollen, one eye nearly shut. He looked smaller in the standard issue jumpsuit. He looked at me through his one good eye, a flicker of triumph in it. He thought I was there because his ploy had worked. "Pops," he said, his voice raspy. "You came." "I came to look you in the eye, Kevin," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I got your letters. The angry one and the sorry I got caught one. I know about the fight you started." His smirk faltered. "You think this is a game? You think manipulating an old man's guilt is a sign of strength? It's the weakest thing you've ever done. You left me in here to rot," he hissed, leaning forward. "You put yourself in here." I shot back, my voice rising for the first time. "With every crushed pill, with every stolen dollar, with every lie to my friends. You did this. Not me. And I will not carry the weight of your choices anymore." I stood up, the metal chair scraping loudly against the floor. "That land you covet so much? It's not just dirt and trees. It's my life with Eleanor. It's the memory of her. And you tried to steal that. You tried to erase me. But I'm still here." His face was a mask of fury and defeat. "I am your grandfather. I loved you. I still love the boy you were. But the man you are? I have no room for him in my life. Do not write to me again. Do not have anyone call me. You are dead to me." I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I walked out of the prison, through the gates, and into the clean open air. The grief was a physical pain, a final terrible severing. I sat in my truck for a long time just breathing. When I got home, I went straight to the lake. I took the folder with his letters, and I took the letter from Eleanor. I read hers one last time, tracing her words with my finger. "You are the strongest man I know." Then I struck a match. I held it to the corner of Kevin's letters and watched as the angry, manipulative words turned to ash and floated away on the evening breeze. I didn't burn Eleanor's letter. I placed it back in its frame, a testament to love and warning. The next day I called a realtor. Not to sell, but to draw up new plans. I was going to subdivide a small portion of my land, the part farthest from the main house, and donate it to the city to be turned into a public park, with a plaque dedicated to Eleanor. It would be a place for families, for children to play, for people to make their own happy memories by the water. It wasn't about getting rid of my legacy. It was about sharing it. It was about reclaiming the narrative of my life from the poison of greed and betrayal. Kevin wanted to own this land, to possess it. I wanted it to be a gift. As I signed the preliminary papers, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't even known I was still carrying. The battle was truly over now. The war for my soul, for my memories, for the meaning of my life. I had won. The house was no longer empty. It was full of me, full of Eleanor, full of the peace we had earned. The park project became my anchor. I named it Eleanor's Grove, a quiet lakeside spot with picnic tables, a small playground, and a winding path through the pines. The city council was thrilled with the donation, and the process of permits and planning boards gave my days a new structure. It was a tangible way to honor her memory, to create something that was the absolute antithesis of Kevin's greed. Months passed. The park's construction began, the sounds of bulldozers and hammers a symphony of new beginnings. I'd walk down there every day with a thermos of coffee, watching the progress, chatting with the foreman. The nightmares had finally subsided. Kevin's letters had stopped. I had started to believe the storm was truly behind me. Then on a crisp autumn morning, a sleek black sedan pulled up my long gravel driveway. A woman in a sharp, expensive-looking pantsuit stepped out. She had an air of effortless authority that immediately put me on guard. "Mr. Arthur Miller?" she asked, her voice crisp and professional. "That's me. And you are?" "My name is Cassandra Voss." I'm a journalist with Global Insight magazine. She offered a business card. I'm working on a long-form piece about financial crimes against the elderly, and your case came across my desk. I was hoping I could speak with you about your experience. My guard shot up even higher. My case is closed. My grandson is in prison. I have nothing more to say. I understand your reluctance, Mr. Miller, she said, her gaze steady and intelligent. But your story is about more than just one crime. It's about a system that failed you, about the subtle signs of manipulation that are so often missed. Sharing it could help protect others. She was good. She was hitting all the right notes. But something felt off. The timing, the way she'd found me out here, the intensity in her eyes. It felt less like an interview and more like an interrogation. I'm sorry, Ms. Voss, I said firmly. My answer is no. She nodded, a flicker of something, disappointment, annoyance, in her eyes. I respect your privacy. If you change your mind, here's my card. She got back in her car and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust in her wake. I mentioned it to Sarah Bennett that afternoon. Her reaction was immediate and sharp. Arthur, Global Insight is a reputable publication, but I've never heard of a Cassandra Voss. Let me make some calls. Her calls revealed nothing. No journalist by that name worked for Global Insight. The business card, while professional, led to a dead-end phone number and a generic email address. Someone is phishing, Arthur, Sarah said, her voice grim. They're trying to get close to you to get information. But why? The money's been recovered. Kevin's in prison. What's left? I don't know, she admitted. But we need to find out. The mystery deepened a week later. I was in town buying supplies when a man approached me outside the hardware store. He was younger, dressed in a worn leather jacket, with a nervous energy. Mr. Miller? I was told to give you this, he mumbled, thrusting a folded piece of paper into my hand before quickly walking away and disappearing into the crowd. I unfolded the paper. It was a single typewritten line. He didn't work alone. A cold dread, different from the fear I'd felt with Kevin, seeped into my bones. This wasn't about a direct confrontation. This was a shadow game. I called Detective Miller immediately. We met at the station. She examined the note. It's a common tactic to unsettle someone. But the question is, who sent it? And is there any truth to it? We re-examined the entire case file. Kevin had never implicated anyone else. He and Chloe had been the sole perpetrators. Daniel, Chloe's brother, who I'd never even met, had been completely unaware. The financial trails led only to Kevin and Chloe. Could it be Kevin himself? I asked, the thought making me feel sick. Trying to torment me from prison? Detective Miller shook her head. His mail is monitored. This didn't come from him. This is from the outside. The feeling of being watched returned with a vengeance. I installed more security cameras, this time with motion sensors that covered the entire perimeter of the property. The peaceful rhythm of my life was shattered again. A few days later, the motion sensor on the back fence near the tree line went off at 2 a.m. The camera feed showed a figure, hooded and faceless, standing at the edge of the woods, perfectly still, just watching the house. They were gone before the private security detail I'd hired could get there. This was no longer about the past. This was a present and active threat. The break came from an unexpected source. Melissa, Kevin's half-sister. She called me, her voice anxious. Mr. Miller, a woman came to see me. A journalist named Cassandra Voss. She was asking very specific questions about my father, about his business dealings before he died. She seemed to think there was a connection to what happened with Kevin. Connection. The pieces began to click into place, forming a terrifying picture. Kevin's biological father, a man named Richard, had been a small-time con artist who died in a car accident when Kevin was a baby. We'd never had any contact with him. But what if Kevin had? What if he hadn't been acting out of simple greed, but following in his father's footsteps, or worse, following his father's plan? Sarah and Detective Miller dug deeper into Richard's history. He had been involved in a loose network of grifters who specialized in inheritance hijacking, grooming or manipulating individuals to gain control of estates. Richard had died before any major score, but his associates were still out there. Cassandra Voss wasn't a journalist. She was one of them. She wasn't trying to do a story, she was doing reconnaissance. The note, The Watcher in the Woods, it was all a message. Kevin's failure had cost them a multi-million-dollar payday, and they weren't happy about it. The final confrontation didn't happen at my house. It happened in a quiet corner of a city library, of all places. I was there with Sarah, meeting with a historian about the land donation when I saw her. Cassandra Voss was sitting at a table, pretending to read a book, her eyes fixed on me. I told Sarah and the historian I needed a moment. I walked over to Cassandra's table and sat down across from her. Her mask of professional calm slipped for a second, revealing surprise. "We need to stop this dance, Ms. Voss," I said, my voice low. "Or whatever your name is." She recovered quickly, giving me a thin, cold smile. "I don't know what you mean, Mr. Miller. I know about Richard. I know about the network. The game is over. You lost." Her smile vanished. "My associates do not like to lose. Your grandson was an impulsive idiot. He ruined a decade of careful planning." A decade. The words hit me like a physical blow. This hadn't started after Eleanor's death. They had been watching, waiting, grooming Kevin for years. "The land is being turned into a public park," I said. "It will never be sold. There is nothing for you here. Tell your associates that. And tell them that if anyone ever comes near me or my family again, the files I have on Richard's old crew, the files my lawyer and the police are holding, will be sent to every law enforcement agency in the country." It was a bluff. We had names but no solid files. But from the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, it worked. She stood up, her chair scraping back. "You're a stubborn old man. You have no idea what you're dealing with." "I'm dealing with vultures," I said, standing to meet her gaze. "And I've already chased you off my land once." She left without another word. We never saw or heard from her again. The Watcher in the Woods disappeared. The police believed the network, faced with exposure and a target that was no longer profitable, had simply moved on. The park was completed the following spring. At the dedication ceremony, with children laughing on the swings and families spreading out picnic blankets, I finally felt the last of the fear leave me. I had faced my grandson's hatred and the cold, professional malice of the world he'd been part of. I had protected my home, not with walls and guns, but with resilience and by turning my legacy into a gift for others. I still live in the house by the lake. The silence is no longer empty. It's peaceful. I still talk to Eleanor, telling her about the park, about the people who enjoy it. Sometimes I even think about the boy Kevin was, before the poison of greed and a toxic legacy twisted him. I mourn that boy. But the man he became is a ghost I finally laid to rest. The land is at peace, and so, at last, am I.